Hello, everyone. This is the One Point Podcast, and I'm Rohit Yadav. Last year in September, we published a unique report called Diverse by Default, in which we explored the what, the why, and how of the diversity topic. We surveyed and interviewed over 40 ecosystem people, investors, founders, and operators to find pragmatic approach, tangible methods, and productive frameworks. And one of them was Agata. And I'm glad that she's joining me today to discuss her journey and explore together how the ecosystem has changed. But before we start, let me introduce Agata to you all. Agata is an investor, two-time founder, and a creator of the famous Female Foundry community, which has over 6,000 investors and female founders across Europe. She's mentor for multiple startups and on the advisory board of a VC firm. Very recently, she also launched an AI incubator in partnership with Google Cloud. So, congratulations, Agata, on that. Having worked across a range of industries, she has surely gained a wealth of experience in the startup world. Agata, welcome to the podcast today. And let's begin with the Female Foundry community, which is the bedrock of all your activities. So, if you can introduce the Female Foundry community and the motivation on starting it.
Thank you. Thank you, Rohit, for having me today. I really love what you're doing. So it's a pleasure for me to join you today. So a bit about
Thank you.
Female Foundry. So Female Foundry is really a reflection of my experiences as a founder and as an investor. So just in a nutshell, and you've done a great job on introducing myself. So I will try to not repeat this too much, but basically for the past 12 years, I've been on both sides of the venture ecosystem. First, as a founder of two businesses. The first one was a data analytics business. The second one that is still running. It's a securitization platform for investment banks. And then I was part of two venture capital funds. I did a few angel investments along the way as well. So really about 4 years ago, when I've moved to the venture capital side, I realized that there were not many VCs and VCs with founder experience, which was a little bit of a shock for me because I would say today we have a wealth of information. Again, LinkedIn is exploding when it comes to updates, events, invitations, and so on. 4 or 5 years ago, that wasn't really the case. I think that COVID definitely accelerated this change in the venture ecosystem. When I was a founder, I'm not going to quote the name of the fund, but multiple very big funds, prolific funds, literally had a landing page. And that was it. The doors were closed. So when I've moved to the venture capital side, I kind of surely almost assumed that every investor has had some sort of founding experience, and obviously I was wrong. I'm not sure. I will quote PitchBook data here: 7% of VCs in Europe have founded a company before, compared to 45% in the US. So
that's very low.
That's astonishingly low. And so when I've moved to the venture capital side, I realized, I might have a different perspective when it comes to investing and also supporting startups.
Mhm.
And that was really the very beginning of Female Foundry. Actually, at the beginning, because this was during COVID times, I started this clubhouse room for entrepreneurs, just giving them very practical, maybe not even advice, but sharing my ideas and my journey in terms of how they could be potentially considering building their ventures. And that room at some point just exploded. I think there were about 400 people inside that room. And I thought, okay, hold on, there is something there. There's maybe founders need that sort of advice and this sort of exchange. And then surely I actually got kind of also another discovery was around how many female entrepreneurs there were in the ecosystem. Again, my assumption was that I surely was one of many. That topic of female entrepreneurship wasn't really as hot, let's say, which is great, as it is right now. So I thought, okay, since there are not many overall women with this sort of experience that I have, why don't I just share that experience with female entrepreneurs specifically? So that was the original Female Foundry. Kind of accelerating that topic over the past 3.5 years through different partnerships and initiatives. It's grown into a network of over 6,000 VCs and female entrepreneurs in Europe. And now I'm
Wow.
focusing on more
Mhm.
on strategic initiatives for the European ecosystem. And I'm passionate about driving innovation in the European ecosystem by making it more equitable, by making the access to capital equitable, and also opening up this topic of bringing growth and funding opportunities to most ambitious and exciting female entrepreneurs or female founded businesses. So that was
Ama-
in a
Amazing
nutshell
intro.
Female Foundry.
I mean, this was the idea was born out of your own experiences, right? That's the best way to do it. And your realization that community is a very big and very critical part for female founders,
Mhm.
right? So, how has your experience been building Female Foundry from scratch for the last 3+ years now? What kind of maybe challenges or successes
Mhm.
that you have seen, how the
Yeah.
community has grown? Maybe you can paint a better picture of running the organization.
Interesting, Rohit. I think no one has ever asked me this question. Everybody is interested in my founding journey as the founder of those two businesses. But actually, it's interesting. It's a great opportunity for me to reflect on my journey with Female Foundry, because I've been only looking forward. I've never actually looked backwards and thinking, okay, how this journey has been. So it's a great question, actually, for me personally. And I will tell you, the journey has been really rewarding in one sense, and I think that, to be fair, even at this point, I can say it's been fairly successful on the personal level and then potentially on the ecosystem layer level when it comes to driving impact. But I cannot say that it hasn't been challenging. And I will tell you the challenge stems from the topic of diversity itself. So I'm a female founder of Female Foundry. So I've been actually
Hmm.
in a sense, and I remember I had this realization about a year ago when I was trying to pull any funds possible to create the report Female Innovation Index now last year, that actually, even though I was trying to drive these new opportunities for female founders, I was actually experiencing the same challenges as female founders face. And we can unwrap
Okay.
them, but basically they were around, obviously, misconceptions, assumptions around in terms of my capabilities and my credibility and so on. So those were probably the kind of some. There have been definitely overlaps when it comes to I can hear, and I've experienced as a founder of tech businesses before. And
Hmm.
yes, as a topic of diversity, I think the narrative, and I think we can talk about it later, but overall the topic of diversity, I think it has been evolving. So when I was starting with Female Foundry, I thought that the topic that I was trying to tackle was seen as irrelevant, as actually non-existent in
Okay.
some way. So that was actually
Wow.
and that was, we are talking about about 4 years ago, let's say 4 years ago, so 2020. And that was the first idea that I had with the report, thinking, okay, is there more data than the typical 2%? 2% of that as a measure of that female found only themes was there, but actually that statistic was, even at that point, I felt ignored. But to be fair, with Female Foundry, I've always been looking on the positive sides than the negatives. So I've been always looking at the glass half full as opposed to glass half empty. So I cannot equally say that statistic actually drove me
Hmm.
to launch Female Foundry. It was more actually my own story and a kind of the kind of the passion for the industry combined with my personal story and kind of ability to share my experiences with other female entrepreneurs. So I hope that this answered the question. I don't want to go into horror stories, even though we are in November.
No, amazing. And maybe we can combine this with your vision. So, like, you
Mhm,
have been producing reports. You are now,
mhm,
you have already started this AI incubator with Google, right? So,
mhm,
where's this vision leading you now? What is planned in the next, I mean, in the
mhm.
startup ecosystem, 3 years is a long time. So, in next year, in 2025, what are your plans? How are you going to support the female founders even much more than you have already done?
Yes. And I will tell you, the beautiful thing about being a founder is, and especially founder that hasn't taken equity, kind of hasn't given up equity, retains the full control of her or his business, is that you can do whatever you want. And therefore that vision,
Okay.
you're the sole owner of that vision. And
Awesome.
the vision that I have for personally, therefore for myself, and Female Foundry is that platform that allows me to kind of to accelerate the progress for my personal vision, is to support the most exciting and the most visionary founders. And this is why the incubator's name is Visionary. To surround myself with the visionary founders, those that are not afraid to or if anything, they're actually their vision is to change or transform their industries with the latest technologies. So that's what definitely resonates with me. I come from a family of
Okay.
scientists and engineers, so builders, in a very, let's say, tangible way, but also in the kind of in an abstract way as well. And I feel like at this time of my career, those elements of AI, science, and opportunities
Mm-hmm.
being unlocked with AI really come into one place. So my vision for Female Foundry is to support female entrepreneurs, whether it is through unlocking funding opportunities or support not because they need that, but for their journeys to be accelerated in any way
Okay.
I can. So obviously this partnership with Google Cloud is super exciting. I've been really enjoying that partnership with the London team that
Awesome.
initiated really that idea of partnering together. But I feel like with AI, obviously we don't even know what the future really looks like. You know, what we would think will be happening in 10 years time will be happening in the next 3 years time. So I'm here to basically
Okay.
to be on that journey with founders and unlock those opportunities for them. One, to make it more specific, obviously this means as well working with some kind of constraints in the ecosystem. So obviously capital, access to capital overall, whether it's to female entrepreneurs or any other entrepreneurs, I would say, especially in Europe, has been an issue over the past 2 years. And I think that change is not going to rapidly really happen. Maybe possibly, I would say Q3 next year. And therefore, what can I do from the Female Foundry side? Coming back to the idea that I can do whatever I want to. I would love to create those opportunities for female entrepreneurs. Reconnecting with the US ecosystem. Again, my second venture I actually launched was working on from the US. I did my MBA at Wharton. So I have these links to the US ecosystem, and I would like to deepen those links to create those opportunities for female entrepreneurs in the UK or in Europe. So that's on my mind these
Aw-
days.
aw- Awesome. I mean, this is one of the hottest topics right now, right? So you have that experience of being a founder, having studied there, having those relationship connections and network. You have already found a great community within the ecosystem. And so what kind of remains is, unlocking the one of the biggest challenge, which is kind of capital, right? So when you have such a community, there's always certain things that you can do. Maybe you can expand the community, maybe you can take it in one or the other direction, but then one of the direction is always about how can we invest in female founders, right? So
And on
maybe
this, by the
that's an
way,
interesting kind of angle to it.
yeah, 100%. And exactly on that, because I also want to come back to your second question, which is the beautiful thing is that if you've created a community, and I can even tell you, I would say consistently what I've learned. I'm not a community builder. I've never done community building before, but I think that what made Female Foundry successful has been consistency and no
Hmm.
compromise. I haven't been really compromising on quality, quality of
Awesome.
content, of people that I will be bringing in, and so on. And I've been really bullish about it. I've said many no's to get to this level. And I think that cohesion really
Okay.
resonates with people. And also one thing that I want to mention is that the quality that I bring to female entrepreneurs, I think what's helped me being a founder is it something that I would find interesting? I always put a founder hat, kind of my experience as a founder, and thinking, what would I ask as a founder, or what would I find interesting? it's always that somewhere
Makes
at the
sense.
back of my everything that I do. So I think that's led to this, let's say, where we are. I don't want to call it a success yet.
Okay.
I think the journey is I don't want to
You
shoot
should. You
myself in the
should.
foot.
I mean,
I think it's a
forming such
journey.
a
It's a
community
journey.
in yes, true. I mean, but you should always celebrate at appropriate time, right? So I would
I
say you have
do.
built such a nice community.
Yes.
You have done so many things for the female founders, so you should feel proud about it for sure. Um, let's maybe take a
Hmm.
step on the journal towards this journal diversity topic and move away from the female foundry as
Yep.
an
Yeah.
organization
Yeah.
or as a platform because you are in the ecosystem for such a long time, because you have faced challenges yourself, and because you have heard from other founders, what do you think has changed in last 1 to 2 years with respect to diversity, specifically within the European ecosystem? Do you
Yeah.
think anything has changed? Or is it still kind of business as usual, or do you think it has gone down? Maybe you have some data and statistics to show or talk about.
Hmm. So I cannot really say that much has changed over the past 2 years, but I can say looking at the past 5 years, the topic of diversity, first of all, came onto fore, actually exists. I would say, as I've mentioned
Mhm.
earlier, 5 years ago, diversity was seen as a topic of the seemed like a niche. Now I can definitely see from people that I talk to, and my network is quite diverse by design, by the way. I've always been interested in corporate sector, venture, because these are all, as if you really want to be a leader, let's say, in the venture ecosystem, that means also you need to be connected in the corporate environment, in the
Yeah.
startup environment, funding environment, and so on. So my point is, across those different sides of the ecosystem, the topic definitely has found its footing. So that's a major change, because this means that very often capital comes with it, and therefore, you can start thinking about the initiatives that can change the status quo. So that's 5 years. Over the past 2 years, I think that personally, unfortunately, I'm seeing that the topic of diversity is a little bit stalling right now. I think that people got very enthusiastic about this topic about 3 years ago. Last year,
Okay.
again, unfortunately, we got hit by the one of the most significant economic downturns. And that, unfortunately,
Mhm.
diversity is unfortunately still sits in the bucket of nice to have. Even though there's been a lot of enthusiasm on the topic, many of the corporates and even VC funds, dedicated specific initiatives to that topic. Right now, I'm seeing that topic a little bit fading, just obviously, which is kind of understandable. I think that companies are coming back to their fundamentals, meaning they really want to reposition, which is unfortunate. I think that diversity should be there, embedded into everything that you do permanently. But I'm seeing
Yeah.
that that topic is a little bit losing its footing right now. I don't know what's your experience, by the way, Rohit, because you're also close to this topic yourself.
Um, I mean, I would say diversity should be by default, right? So hence the title
Exactly.
of the report that we mentioned
Yeah.
last year. When I what is really interesting for me is to compare the US versus the European ecosystem. And maybe you can add some views over there as well. So US kind of has taken a bigger downturn on this
Mhm.
diversity topic.
Mhm.
Although a lot of people, when they think about diversity, they think it's nice to have, as you mentioned, something of this sort. But diversity doesn't need to be opposite of meritocracy.
Oh yeah.
You can still invest in the best founders. You can enable the best founders. So from my perspective, I think the biggest gap is at the awareness level,
Mhm.
that the founders themselves are not fully aware on how to kind of diverse founders specifically, not how to start a startup, how to build
Mhm.
business plan and so on. So that is where I see the biggest challenge.
Mhm.
Otherwise, one thing that I kind of see all the time right now, at least, is that if the business plan or the startup is getting rejected for fundraising for a
Mhm.
diverse founder, it's probably not in the same ratio, but it also getting rejected for other founders as well. So the
Yes.
market is tight for everybody, and I
Yes.
wouldn't say it's just tight for diverse founders.
Mhm.
It's just the way the ecosystem is. Hopefully
Yeah.
things will change in 2025,
Mhm.
And herein kind of, I would love to have much more of your feedback that
Mhm.
except because you have a lot of connections in the corporate world,
Mhm.
do you see the same kind of pushback from the corporates in the European side as in the US? Or do you see
Mhm.
there's still kind of difference over there?
Mhm. So unfortunately, I don't have as many connections to the corporate sector in the US, so I cannot make a one-on-one comparison. But
Okay.
again, I would just come back to that economic position of those companies. You know, there've been so many cuts last year. Again, many of those organizations are just trying to find their footing, and that actually applies both to corporates, to LPs, and to VCs. Obviously, there are so many even funds that have been fundraising for the past 2 years. You know, majority of the
Yeah.
capital over the past, let's say, 1.5 years that has gone to venture capital has gone to the big established funds. So I think there are certain challenges in the ecosystem that are emerging. You know, there's not much capital that have been going to emerging or first-time fund managers, and I think that's across the board. I've been looking at some. I like data, and I've been looking at some reports, and maybe I'm not going to be quoting them just to not to make it more too much of an advertisement, but from some of the sources in the US, and I think it's quite consistent. It's just that the great thing about the US ecosystem is that the mindset is a little bit more entrepreneurial and has been founded on those values of capitalism. And therefore, private sector is much more agile and almost self-sufficient in some way, as opposed to in Europe, we rely on those big pockets of capital that are locked in. Or I'm not saying locked in a negative way, that just belong to the European Union or country-specific funds. So I think that creates this dynamic that unfortunately that kind of disables those emerging fund managers to be able to tap into the capital, kind of the same level of capital from the private sector. And that's something that is not going to be dramatically changing over the next years. I mean, this is what it is. And I think that's the dynamic in the times of downturn is really visible and puts a strain on the ecosystem.
Makes sense. I think what you mentioned, the differences between the US and the Europe, I think it's totally relevant and VCs can see it. GPs who are fundraising can definitely see it. Interesting point. And I would love to kind of double down on this and ask one more question. Do you see a difference between diversity focused funds who are concentrating on diversity as a topic versus other journalistic funds who have some element of diversity? Maybe they have female partners, VC partners,
Mm.
and so on. Do you see a difference with respect to the support that is being provided to the diverse founders there?
Yeah,
Do you
so
see
interesting.
enough is being done, or do you think there's still much more can be done?
So I'm a great believer, and I'm seeing a positive change in this. So I'm happy that you were mentioning it, actually, that I would love every fund to be a diversity fund. That's it. And therefore, I
Okay.
hope that those diversity specific funds are just here for are transitionary, because the end goal should be that every fund, there's no need for diversity specific funds. Let's put it this way. And I've seen positive signs of that. I would say on the weekly or bi-weekly basis, I have a GP from an agnostic fund asking me for a deal flow, or you really proactively
Okay.
asking me for recommendations for female entrepreneurs. So that wasn't there about two years ago. Okay, Female Foundry wasn't there either, so I cannot say that. I
Okay.
cannot probably claim that progress, but I would say it shouldn't be the case. And equally, it's not only about the support, but it's also about the quality of support. So my objective would
True.
be that those high quality funds are diverse. They are those high quality, meaning those that are able to really unlock, their networks for those exciting female or male founders. I think those to be supportive for entrepreneurs. And I think that's one of the gaps that I've mentioned earlier, is that hopefully that goes beyond, and kind of hopefully that they can almost do something more that is actually tangible, assuming that they are not entrepreneurs. Do you see what I'm saying? Because
uh,
I hope that they
I mean,
see this chip on their shoulders, and then they're trying harder to do something
yeah.
extra for entrepreneurs, and that's across the board. I don't think it should be the case, and I don't think that this is the case. Again, I've been a founder. I've had GPs. I pitched as a founder to female partners or female associates. I've had as bad experiences with them as with some of the male associates, so or partners.
Mhm.
So maybe there've been
That's striking.
few more horror stories, but to be honest, I'm not a great believer in that drawing that axis between we need more female VCs, and therefore this will result in more female investment. And I don't think that should be the focus. The focus should be focusing basically on top of the funnel. There are not enough female entrepreneurs or diverse founders in the first
Yep.
place. So if we can
Yep.
focus more on encouraging those, let's say sometimes founders that are not in the best position, and therefore we should be asking ourselves why they are not in the best position, and support them at the beginning of their journey, so they are equipped to start really exciting companies, then we are going to see that difference. So I think that the challenge is on the top of the funnel, and we've demonstrated that actually. Not even demonstrated. We were not looking for that answer, but that was really visible with the report that we launched earlier this year.
Awesome. I would 100% agree to the top of the funnel issue. Why do you think, and I mean, maybe we are repeating a couple of things, but it's essential to capture this question. Why do you think that not much has changed? So the way I see it is everybody kind of understands that diversity is a topic until diversity is by default, right? So this is kind of a transitionary thing, and we have to kind of somehow solve for it. But if you look at fundraising, if you look at the obstacles, if you look at the challenges and so on an ecosystem level, I'm not talking about the founder level challenges, but on a more ecosystem level, not much has changed till now, even though everybody kind of understands it, right? And there are reports. I mean, you have written a report, we did a report on the practical steps that can be taken. If one thing that you want to highlight why it isn't changing, what would that be?
I'll tell you, Rohit. Because there hasn't been enough time. We haven't spent enough time on this topic. We are talking about venture, to see even returns and really to see the impact of anything in venture capital. If you invest today, you're going to see that feedback loop is so long in venture capital to convince anyone, whether you're emerging fund manager or even a founder, to build that credibility around the topic. It just takes time in venture. And as I've mentioned, to be honest, from my experience, maybe there are some people with other points of view, but from my perspective, that topic only came into fore about 3.5 years ago. 5 years ago, it wasn't. I would never call myself a female entrepreneur 5 years ago, because it wasn't even a phrase 5 years ago. So my point is, I'm positive. I'm seeing many initiatives happening. There are more, obviously we are looking for the tangibility, meaning unlocking capital and providing high quality advice or whatever is needed. I feel like that the topic of diversity is tapering off when it comes to excitement, but I think that it just takes time. So we just need to keep going. We need to be patient and doing what we are doing, and we are going to see that difference. I would say let's wait 2-3 years from now. We are going to start to see that difference. But I feel like there should be far more focus based on the data that we've gathered. It's visible that there should be a little bit more when it comes to incentives done for entrepreneurs looking or encouraging basically those diverse entrepreneurs to be starting ventures. So I would say that's probably would be my direction. Again, Female Foundry cannot do everything, but for someone to pick up that idea, that opportunity, that would be great. And then waiting 2-3 years, we are going to see that change.
Nicely said, Agata.
It's time. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's about the patience. Venture capital is a long-term game. We need to be able to see those changes. Year on year, we can compare, but obviously, if the things have to take shape, we need to kind of be patient and keep on doing, as you said, what we are doing, and maybe much more. Let's switch gears. Let's kind of drill down on the founder level. And let's talk about, the most significant challenges, according to you, that the founders
Mhm.
face, diverse founders face. And if you can share some founder stories, good stories, bad stories, horror
Mm.
stories, whatever you want to share.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have many stories, I will tell you, because there are periods of a year on an annual basis that I speak with about 12 founders a day. So the great thing about Female Foundry and the fact that I'm always looking for opportunities to bring value to founders. Founders speak to me not
Hmm.
at the point of necessary fundraising. Yes, that's the case, and that's probably 50% of the cases. But 50% of the cases is actually founders building their ventures. So you've asked about
Okay.
what are the key challenges. Switching it a little bit, turning it around a little bit. I think that there are some qualities of, again, I can only speak for female entrepreneurs specifically, that I
Hmm.
wish were not there, that would change change those opportunities for female entrepreneurs. So again, I not only speak with female entrepreneurs, but I also speak with other entrepreneurs, just male, let's say, entrepreneurs. And I can see striking
Yep.
difference when it comes to confidence very often and communicating their vision and being actually ballsy about what they want to achieve, being good at numbers. Again, that's a little bit more visible with male counterparts. So I'm just saying there are still opportunities for female entrepreneurs to just get better at certain things that resonate specifically with VCs. I'm not saying they're going to be working for everybody, but I feel like there are certain expectations that VCs have
Okay.
that could be improved, and I'm working tirelessly to make that exactly happen because I know what the expectations are. So now when it comes to challenges, I would say, again, it starts with on the top of the funnel. I would say still getting to that, especially when you're a founder somewhere else. London is a great ecosystem to fundraise because there are about 5 events a day where you can freely meet an investor before you start fundraising, create that relationship. If you're doing well, that potentially can lead to an investment. But there are ecosystem where first of all there are not many funds, but also those funds don't operate in those kind of open bases. And I think the first
Hmm.
challenge is how do you get how do you grab someone's attention to set up a meeting? So I'm not sure whether this is the case for female entrepreneurs right now. I feel like, again, based on my experience, many VCs will be prioritizing right now. So that's one of the wins, because you asked about the wins, about the progress.
Okay.
Definitely, I would say VCs would prioritize female founder deal flow right now, again, from what I'm hearing from my experience and my
Good to hear.
observation. And then I would say one of the challenges is how do you tell that story within the 30 minutes introduction call? And that's when this is why I highlighted them at the beginning. How do you sell the story when it comes to a vision, meaning you can become that, let's say, unicorn, whatever you're looking for, but basically that big story. And also, can you establish very quickly credibility? Again, my personal story, being able to establish credibility as a founder, especially as a female founder, could be a challenge. Just because, for example, you speak softly, or because like me, you like pink. There are certain kind of misconceptions that
Hmm.
not many investors are willing to challenge. So kind of being able to,
Got it.
at the beginning of those introduction calls, very quickly establish yourself, meaning talking about why you're the best person to be inventing or kind of innovating or building this sort of company. What are your unfair advantages as a founding team, and so on, almost being ahead of those before someone starts to make those misconceptions. I've definitely been advising many founders, and it seems to me that they've been working. So these are some of the things that I see, but obviously it's a funnel itself. The fundraising is a funnel itself. So being able to consistently, again, show that numerical literacy and so on also help. And obviously, if you're building something that is actually generally innovative and interesting and with high growth potential,
Hmm.
I don't think that you should have a challenge at the end of the process to fundraise.
Good to know. Let's double click on each and everything that you
Yes.
mentioned. And for example, you mentioned London, right?
Yeah.
So, would the suggestion or the solution be that if, for example, diverse founders are in the ecosystem which are not well known, there are not many, maybe it's a tier B or tier city, all right,
Mhm.
that they move to a tier A fundraising city like London or maybe Berlin or somewhere else where they're much more found? I know it
I don't want
sounds
to say
very.
that because at the same time I think that there are some ecosystems that are really vibrant, and obviously there's some new ecosystem. For example, Poland, I'm Polish originally, so I know that they're kind of up and
Mhm.
coming, for example. So I will tell
Okay,
you, as a founder, you just need to be ruthless. If there is a funding, or if there are some opportunities that are being created for your ecosystem, just make sure that you apply for these grants. Make sure to maximize those opportunities, to maximize your
got it.
opportunities within your local ecosystems first, because those, you're not going to equally be in such a competitive melting pot such as London. London has got two sides. On one hand, obviously, it's got immense opportunities, creates these opportunities, but at the same time, it's highly competitive. So potentially,
True.
that's your local ecosystem is a better bet, especially for the pre-seed kind of angel round kind of founders, to prove yourself and already being able to find that first indication of a product market fit. And then obviously, if you feel like you've maximized those opportunities in the local market, absolutely, I would say stats are the best way to prove it. Obviously, UK is still the biggest ecosystem for entrepreneurs overall. So I would say
Yeah, that's
do
a
what
fact.
works best for you, and but make sure that you don't
Okay.
make those assumptions. Make sure that you maximize what you have at hand. I think I see it consistently with founders. They have these big ideas, but then when I kind of drill a little bit deeper, it turns out they didn't do basics yet. And already they complain
Okay.
about certain certain aspects. So do your homework and
Okay.
try to maximize your opportunities fast. Yeah.
Yeah, build basics better. I understood your point on like maximizing your chances within the local ecosystem.
Mhm.
And moving on to the couple of other points that you mentioned, right? You mentioned about the characteristics
Mhm.
or personal abilities, right?
Mhm.
Yes, there is a challenge there in terms of getting across to VCs and how VCs perceive money details. And because there is kind of an attention gap over there, they look at the
Yeah.
deck for 30 seconds. They try to judge the book by the cover and so on. There are biases, X, Y, Z.
Mhm.
So, understood the challenge on that side. What would be a solution for that? How would you prepare founders? Would you recommend founders preparing it with your friends? How to
Mhm.
give a pitch? Would you suggest them join as many communities as possible? Would you
Yeah.
tell them something else? Like what would be
Yeah,
like a
yeah, yeah.
concrete solution to solve for this?
Yes. So obviously there is no one solution for everybody, but I would
Yes.
say just on topics that you've just mentioned. So I have some comments on that. So I definitely come across founders that don't really understand how venture capital works. Like literally,
Mhm.
don't really understand that if you want to take venture capital, you need to be of a certain profile. And therefore, there is going to be that expectation of high growth and reaching that profitability sooner than you maybe even want to. So understanding the mechanics of the venture capital,
Mhm.
I would say would be the first step, and that is not going to be done by anybody else but than you. So that's the step one, because then once you understand it and you can understand, first of all, you might first realize that venture capital is not for you. So that's great. You've just saved time and
Okay.
frustration. Secondly, you might actually get excited and think, okay, this is absolutely for me. And therefore, this means that you will be, that credibility that I was talking about will come across
Mhm.
obviously much, much better. So understanding the venture capital kind of ecosystem mechanics, venture capital mechanics, meaning starting from LPs already. Now and expectations when it comes to return on capital. Second thing would be very clear in terms of the next 12 months, in terms of those value. I call them personally value inflection points. Being able to map out your journey and sell
Okay.
someone on the journey. But thirdly, because you've talked about communities, there is this misconception that the more events and the more communities I'm part of, and I have, my phone is full of WhatsApp groups that I stopped actually even checking, because there's an overwhelm of communities these days, and there's so much distraction. So as a founder, you also have to know where to say no. And this means also, that chat with a founder that you've had for the past 45 minutes, having a drink, staying up late. Is it really going to get you closer to that value inflection point when it comes to your company? Is it really going to make a difference? So preparation when it comes to, is this event going to has a potential of moving that needle for me, or is this community going to bring anything new that I don't know already? Is it I think that founders get this FOMO effect, and they just sometimes don't spend enough time on preparation. The same as I mentioned with learning VC mechanics and really assessing whether this is something for me. The same goes to communities in opportunities that are presented to them. So that would be my advice.
Okay.
Keep your head down, focus on your market, focus on understanding your customers, as opposed to socializing like crazy, being on winning all these awards of popularity and not getting anywhere with your startup. I think you will be better off if you're really passionate about the problem that you're solving. Focus on that, and you're going to be successful.
Okay, got it. So this was more on focus on the personality and how you come across to VCs, right? So you mentioned one more third point. You mentioned about the communication during a pitch, those 30 minutes that you have during the first conversation with the VC. How can diverse founders prepare for that even better?
Yes. Very good question. And I had a specific post in my weekly newsletter on this. And it starts with about last year. I can share it. But basically, I think it must have been about 1.5 years ago. Because it's 30 minutes.
We would love to share it. So you can send it to us later.
I will find it, definitely. Because in that post, in that, one paragraph, I break down literally the time. It's 30 minutes. So I won't walk through that, but basically the understanding of 30 minutes, such a short time. And I break it down into introduction is 1 minute, or someone connecting online, it's 1 minute lost. Someone is like, sorry, I have another meeting, or finish off the notes, that's 1 minute lost. It's 28 minutes. So I break it down into minutes. And that's when you realize the first introduction call is about getting your idea, an idea about you as the founding team and about your business horizontally. So assuming that you run out of time, not being able to talk about your market, your solution, your tech, assume that it's going to be a red flag. Assume that the investor is going to say, they probably don't know what they're doing. So your first objective with the introduction call is not to raise any red flags by answering all the questions and being able to cover market, founding team, solution, problem. I mapped them out. I think there are about 7 topics horizontally that I want you to cover, and not run out of time, and be exciting, and be up. All these other parts need to come within the 30 minutes. So first is timekeeping and not lingering on one topic that's not interesting. Being able for an investor to be able to ask questions, follow-up questions on each of these 7, let's say, segments is the key. And on top of that, obviously having a great business, so you don't raise flags when it comes to your, cap table or anything that comes up during that first call. So timekeeping plus getting yourself kind of sorted when it comes to those 7 topics. So within that one follow-up or couple of follow-up questions, there are no red flags. If there are no red flags, by the way, and you're generally interesting, you should have that follow-up call. There is a danger of you not being interesting and not exciting enough, not passionate enough, when you fall through the cracks and you kind of end in this landfill, I'm sorry to say it, but of 70% of startups being not feeling it. So you don't want to be in that gray zone either. So being prepared, timekeeping, and having your business reflect those expectations on the VC side, I would say it's something that I would be working on as a founder deeply.
Awesome. I loved your structured way of thinking. So we would love to share the article that you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
That's how founders should be thinking about it. Half an hour, you divide that into time slots, and what can you cover, not raising red flags and so on. Amazing advice. Thanks.
That's one thing that I want to say. Don't share ahead of the time the pitch deck, but don't go through your deck on the call. the call is also on top of that, is supposed to be a great opportunity for you to build that rapport, build that relationship with the investor on the personal level. And so every time when a founder is like, oh, let me open it up, I'm like, stop. I don't want to see your deck. I saw your deck before we joined the call. I have questions on that deck and on your solution. So let's use the time on that, as opposed to you in your pace going through the slides that are not even interesting for me, potentially because I know the space, or because I already have got a list of questions I want to ask you, and we run out of time as a consequence of sharing you going through the deck. It's not supposed to be a presentation. It's supposed to be a great opportunity for you to create that relationship with your potential investor. So that's another thing I just want to throw out there, because that post is quite old now, 1.5 years ago. I'm not sure whether I threw it there as well.
Okay.
So yeah.
Agata, amazing advice. We're almost through. Just last two questions left. And the second last is, I will ask it as a difficult question. So how do you rationalize diverse founders saying that, hey, you know what? We don't care where the capital is coming from which VC, diversity focused VC or not. We just care about the capital itself. So how do you rationalize this statement in general?
Yeah. So I'm with them. First of all, I'm on their side.
Okay.
I will tell you why. Because as a founder, if you really need capital, I wouldn't say I don't care. I don't care whether it's equally that diversity should be on the default, default on the other side. So I don't care in a way, as the same way as we should be saying, I don't care who is that founder on the other side. If they are building great business, if they are passionate, if they have that incredible vision for their company, I don't care who they are. And personally, I don't care. So the same goes to founders. I don't think that they should care where the money comes from, or kind of who is it? Is it a woman or a man? I think that what they should care for more. What else apart from capital? Because capital is cheap. Maybe not today. I cannot say these days. Last year, this year, potentially.
Or commoditized.
This year. But what's that value add? Is this investor going to really make a difference again, apart from capital, when it comes to unlocking that network or providing advice that I'm not going to find anywhere else? So I wouldn't be compromising on that. But whether it's a man or a female, it's actually I don't care, as long as I believe that person is going to accelerate my business. I know that there are some founders that really care about their cap table, for example, being more female or male or certain. That diversity as a founder, obviously, at some point potentially is important, just to bring other perspectives. But I don't think that gender in this case makes a huge difference, unless you're a femtech startup or something that is really relevant to gender. But I would say definitely make sure that diversity, when it comes to your advisors, when it comes to your investors, is there, because that might just result in a better business or in better advice. So I hope that I
So
answered
it's
that
not
question.
just about capital. Yes, I mean, it's
Yes.
not just about capital, as you said, right? It's much more other things like the value add that
Yes,
the
and
investors are
diversity of
providing,
thoughts, and the diversity of
diversity of
thoughts.
thoughts,
There's no point of
right?
having another consultant as a female consultant or versus male.
Mhm.
That's not going to make a change. What are the experiences of those people? Where do they come from?
Yeah.
What their networks are? If they overlap, maybe whether it's a female or male doesn't really make much difference. Maybe that's the direction I would say those founders should be exploring.
Got it. So they should actually change the way they're looking at things. They should change their lens. They should not think about where the money is coming from that perspective. They should rather think about what the VC is providing to them, the value add.
Yeah.
If the value add is provided by a female GP or a male GP, it's totally equal. A diversity fund, non-diversity fund, totally fine. What's the value add that the investor is providing?
Exactly.
Got it. In the last, it's more about the personal side, right? Apart from the discussion focused on the founder on the VC world, this is more about on the personal side.
I see.
Have you read something interesting that you would, or maybe heard something interesting that you would like to share with the audience in general, aside from the
that
talks
my
that we had right
world
now?
is a tech startup VC world, so it's difficult for me to pick up on anything that doesn't belong to that world, especially these days when I'm pretty much absorbed fully. Yes. I would tell you, okay, I also read, but I'm everything that I read or listen to or discuss is really about innovation. So I
Okay.
personally, I'm actually excited about without bringing politics into this conversation. I'm excited about the future. I think we live
Okay.
in very exciting times. Full stop. So I'm always connecting the dots. So instead of having one thought, I'm always connecting the dots in terms of where the market is going. You know, US
Okay.
capital, non-US capital. If not US or non-Europe, where's capital? Where are those how far are we from seeing those applications of AI being actually tangible and kind of embedding in our lives? So I'm constantly kind of connecting the dots. So I'm not a kind of, there's been nothing, everything is in making, and therefore I don't have any strong views on that. But I think that the feeling that I have is that we live in exciting times, and I feel that it hasn't been. Maybe this is the thought I want to finish our conversation today. It hasn't been easier as a diverse, let's say, founder to start a
Okay.
business than it is today. There are so many
Okay.
low code tools to build a website. You pay £5
True.
monthly. You have a website generated for you, by the way. So it's not even, you don't need to take time, doesn't need to take much. You
Yeah.
can, leverage local tools to build your first MVP. You can, even have remote teams, because post COVID, we are so comfortable with remote, to build those decentralized teams. It has never been easier to
Hmm.
be a founder today. But now it has never been more difficult to know where the world is going. And that in
Okay.
itself becomes really interesting topic. So I would like to leave you with that. So therefore, as a
It's super
founder,
interesting.
which direction you're going to go in this exciting era?
Agata, thank you so much for an amazing chat, all the advice that you have for the founders and all the kind of nuggets that you shared for the diversity topic. Thank you so much for joining us and supporting this, right?
Likewise.
All the best for 2025 for your own journey
Thank you.
and the
Likewise.
AI incubator and all the other ideas that you have. Amazing.
Perfect.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so
Take
much.
care.
Thank you, Rohit,
Bye.
for what you're doing as well. I want to say, yes, we keep going and we're going to see
Thank
the
you.
difference. Perfect. See you
Thank you
soon.
so much. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye.
Bye bye.